M30. Last days of the Unification Wars. A Thunder Warrior officer whose name the Imperium will not release walks out of the collapsed gene vault under the Himalazian Steppe, carrying 2 intact stasis tubes on his shoulders. Behind him, Arik Tyranis is dead. The vault is on fire. The Mechanicus delegation that came to collect the gene seed is dead. The word-bearer chaplains who came to consecrate the recovery are dead. The officer walks for 9 days through unmapped terrain to a Marauder muster camp that does not exist on any Imperial chart. He hands 1 tube to the camp's senior captain. He keeps the 2nd tube. He says 4 words. The line continues here. Then he walks back into the steppe and is not seen again. The 1st tube becomes a chapter. The 2nd tube becomes a chapter master. The officer becomes neither, because the officer becomes both. His original name was Khar Vortek. His Astartes name was Asterion Moloc. There were 2 giants, not 1. There was 1 man, not 2.
Now stay with me, because that hook is wrong on purpose. It is wrong the way every Imperial record is wrong on purpose. It is wrong the way the Sigillite intended it to be wrong. The cold open you just heard is a deliberate dramatization drawn from an audience-surfaced reading of canonical Heresy-era texts, and the central error in it is the most important thing about this entire video. Because the 2nd giant was not 1 man. The 2nd giant was 2 men, and only one of them became Asterion Moloc. The other one walked into a different chapter and became something we are going to spend the next 35 minutes trying to name. This is not the Asterion video. This is the Asterion's shadow video. The companion to a thesis already established in the previous brief on this channel, that Asterion Moloc, current chapter master of the Minotaurs, is the same individual as Ollanius Pius, perpetual, last of one bloodline. That video answered one question.
This video answers a different one. Because the audience commenter who set this whole investigation in motion did not say 1 giant survived. The audience commenter said 2. Quote, Arik Tyranis had a 2nd in command in the Outcast dead. He was going to receive the next gene seed they found. That's 2 giant MFers that disappeared. Unquote. 9 likes on that comment thread. 2 separate accounts converging on the same reading. And the canonical text the comment points at is verifiable, so we are going to verify it. 3:30 in. Time to flag something. The name in the hook, Khar Vortek, pronounced Khar Vortek, is not a Games Workshop name. It does not appear in any Black Library novel, any Forge World Black Book, any codex, any White Dwarf article, any Index Astartes volume. It is a narrative handle this script is using to refer to a canonically real figure whose canonical name is different. The canonically real figure is named Gota.
He appears in Graham McNeil's novel, The Outcast Dead, published by Black Library in 2011, the 17th book of the Horus Heresy series. He is introduced in the Petitioner's City section. He is identified on the page as Arik Tyranis' lieutenant. He is identified on the page as a surviving Thunder Warrior. He is named twice, and then he disappears. That is the 2nd giant. That is the entire body of canonical evidence. 1 name, 2 scenes, then nothing, for 15 real-world years. And the Imperium has had 15 real-world years to do something with that name, and the Imperium has done nothing. No follow-up novel, no White Dwarf insert, no Forge World Black Book entry, no codex footnote, no Index Astartes successor chapter family tree, nothing.
Gotha is the most documented unknown character in the Heresy-era canon, and every video on this topic stops at Tyranis and never names the man standing behind him. Until now.
Let us walk back through what McNeil actually put on the page. 330-7. The Outcast Dead. Black Library 2011. Chapters set in the petitioner's city underworld. Arik Tyranis, pronounced Tyranis, is hiding on Terra under the criminal alias Babu Dakal. He runs the underworld of the petitioner's city. He runs the underworld because he has to, because the Thunder Warrior gene stock that built him is failing. His organs are degrading at an accelerating rate, and every other surviving Thunder Warrior he has gathered around himself is dying faster than he can save them. He maintains a hidden genetic laboratory at the heart of the city. He maintains it because he believes, based on partial data smuggled out of the Imperial palace by sympathetic Mechanicus contacts, that a single intact progenoid gland from a true Astartes would be enough seed material to reverse engineer the Emperor's accomplishment, to save what is left of his cohort, to keep his men alive. This is the Tyranis the audience commenter is pointing at. This is the man who knew what he was doing with genetics. Standing beside him in every laboratory scene, in every gang scene, in every confrontation scene, is Gotha. Gotha is not Tyranis' bodyguard. Gotha is not a thug. Gotha is Tyranis' number 2. McNeil is careful about this. In a petitioner's city run by a former Thunder Warrior captain, the second most senior figure is the man with the keys to the laboratory, the man who knows the procedures, the man who has access to the gene stock. And in the scenes McNeil writes, Gotha has access. Gotha stands in the laboratory. Gotha stands at Tyranis' shoulder during the negotiation with the Outcast Dead, the renegade Astartes prison break group who have, by complete narrative accident, walked into the only place on Terra where their gene seed has commercial value. The Outcast Dead in McNeil's novel are not themselves Thunder Warriors. That is a common misreading.
The Outcast Dead are 7 Traitor Legion Astartes who escape Imperial custody during the early heresy. 1,000 Sun, 1 Death Guard, 1 Emperor's Children, 1 Sons of Horus, 3 World Eaters. They are running. They are being hunted. They cross into the petitioner's city because the petitioner's city is the one place on Terra where Imperial authority does not reach. And Babu Dakal, Tyranis under his alias, sees them coming and recognizes what they carry. They carry Astartes' progenoid material. They carry the thing he has spent a century trying to acquire. Tyranis offers them diplomacy. He says openly that all he wants is the gene seed of a single Astartes, 1 progenoid gland, 1 tissue sample, to stop his fellow Thunder Warriors' bodies from rapidly degrading. He is not asking to be Astartes. He is asking to keep his men alive. The negotiation collapses. The Imperial forces hunting the Outcast Dead converge on the Temple of Woe. A large-scale battle erupts. The majority of the Astartes are killed during the confrontation, and in the chaos, McNeil is explicit about this. Tyranis and Gotha take advantage of the distraction and escape. Both of them, together, out of the city, out of the novel, out of the Black Library record. The next Black Library novel does not mention them. The next Forge World Black Book does not mention them. The Heresy-era Codex follow-ups do not mention them. They are simply gone. The canonical text has carried them to the edge of the page and dropped them, but it dropped them with something. Because the negotiation in the Temple of Woe was about gene seed, and the man who walked out of the Temple of Woe alongside Tyranis, Gotha, was the man who would have inherited the gene stock if the operation had gone as planned. He was the next recipient. He was the documented next link in the chain. Tyranis dies, or Tyranis vanishes. Either way, Tyranis is the figure whose absence the canon explicitly registers.
The audience commenter's instinct is right. There are two Thunder Warriors documented as escaping the Outcast dead operation. Tyranis is the named one. Gota is the second one. And only one of them ever surfaces again in any form the canon recognizes. 7 minutes. Time to slow down. Because the next beat is the hardest one in this video. The next beat is the gene stock census. And the gene stock census is the spine of the entire thesis. If the census reads one way, the audience commenter is right, and Gota seeded a chapter that is still operating. If the census reads another way, the audience commenter is constructing a folk canon overlay that has no canonical referent. The difference between those two readings is everything, so let us walk through it carefully. The post-heresy Inquisition, the Ordo Hereticus, and the Holy Ordos collectively inherited from the Sigillite a category of administrative problem the Sigillite called uncatalogued stock. Uncatalogued stock refers to gene material, Astartes compatible or Astartes adjacent or pre-Astartes Thunder Warrior, that was logged into Mechanicus storage during the Unification Wars or the early Great Crusade, but whose chain of custody breaks before the formal foundation of the Legiones Astartes. Most uncatalogued stock is junk. Most of it is samples too degraded to use, batches the Emperor abandoned, dead-end experiments. But some of it is not. Some of it is gene stock that was at one point viable, and whose chain of custody breaks not because the sample failed, but because the keeper disappeared. The Thunder Warrior generation produced a number of these breaks. The exact count is disputed. Some readings of the Imperial archival record place the count at 6. Other readings place it lower. The audience surfaced reading. The reading the comment thread is operating from says 6. 3 of those 6 have been recovered, integrated into codex chapters, and quietly absorbed into existing gene lines. 3 of those 6 have never been flagged. Now here is where the writer must be honest. The 6 unaccounted Thunder Warrior gene stocks, 3 recovered, 3 missing, framing is not a thing I can point you at in Index Astartes 4 or in any Forge World Black Book by chapter and verse. It is an audience-surfaced reconstruction, built by careful readers who have braided together the Outcast dead Babu Dakal scenes with broader Forge World census language, and arrived at a number that the published record neither confirms nor denies. The published record is silent. The published record's silence is itself the evidence the audience is reading. Of the 3 recovered stocks, the reading goes: 1 was folded into the Imperial Fist's senior cadre, sometimes called in old fan archival language, the honored Imperators, as an unspoken 7th source for siege specialists. 1 was rumored to have been folded into a Custodes-adjacent splice during the Webway War period, which is itself an interpretive overlay of Master of Mankind, Aaron Dembski-Bowden's 2017 Horus Heresy novel that documents the Custodes operations under Terra. 1 was rumored to have been folded into a Black Templar founder drop cycle. None of these 3 are confirmed. All 3 are circulating in the Heresy-era reader community as the standard tripartite recovered stock list. Of the 3 unrecovered stocks, the reading goes: 1 is Tyranis's, 1 is unidentified, 1 is unidentified. The Tyranis line stock is the one this entire video is about. The Tyranis line stock is the one the audience commenter is pointing at. The Tyranis line stock is the one the script will argue went out the back door of the Temple of Woe in M31 on Goda's shoulders. The Sigillite, Malcador, the Emperor's most trusted administrator and the architect of post-heresy archival suppression, established a standing protocol for the unrecovered stocks. The protocol was, do not pursue, do not flag, do not investigate. The unrecovered stocks were classified as legacy problems, sealed under Malcador's standing authority, and the Inquisition was instructed to treat them as resolved by omission. Chris Wright's 2017 novel Vaults of Terra, The Carrion Throne, dramatizes exactly this kind of sealed by Sigillite authority dynamic. Inquisitor Erasmus Kroll repeatedly hits archive locks in the Imperial Palace stamped with Malcador's seal and finds them unopenable 10,000 years after Malcador's death. The category of Sigillite directive still binding in M41 is canonical.
The specific application to a Thunder Warrior gene stock is interpretive. Honest framing matters here, but the pattern matters. The Imperium does not normally leave gene stock unaccounted. The Imperium normally hunts. The Imperium normally flags. The fact that 3 Thunder Warrior gene stocks were quietly buried under the Sigillite's authority and never pursued is exactly the kind of administrative anomaly the audience reads as deliberate, as cover. 11 minutes. The candidates. If Goda walked out of the Temple of Woe with the second tube, where did the second tube go? 3 candidate chapters surface in the audience discussion lane. We are going to walk through them in the order the commenter's logic implies, and we are going to flag the interpretive scaffolding at each one. Candidate 1. The Marauders. Successor chapter of the White Scars, officially of the Second Founding, named in the Apocrypha of Davio as one of the immediate post-heresy successor formations spun out of Jagatai Khan's gene line. That is the canonical reading. The Marauders are a White Scars successor, and their gene stock is Khan-derived. Full stop. Anything else is interpretive overlay. The interpretive overlay goes like this. The Marauders are isolationist. The Marauders are aloof. The Marauders are documented in Forge World materials as exchanging only the minimum required information with other Imperial chapters, conducting their own recruitment, conducting their own gene seed audits, and operating from a fortress monastery whose location is restricted.
The Marauders have an unusual recruitment and augmentation profile. Marksmanship heavy, ambush tactical, with a strain of physical conditioning the Forge World text describes as outside the standard White Scars template. If the audience reading is right, this is what a chapter looks like when its founder grafted a Tyranis-trained gene engineering methodology onto an otherwise standard second founding skeleton. If the audience reading is wrong, this is just what isolated successor chapters look like, and there are dozens of those across the Imperium. The brief that generated this script asserts the Marauders are the most likely descendant chapter. The script is going to honor that assertion. The script is also going to flag, here and again at the closing, that this is an audience interpretive overlay, not a canonical identification. Candidate 2. The Astral Claws before the Badab War. This is the candidate the brief presents, and the candidate I have to publicly correct. The Astral Claws are a documented Astartes chapter whose gene seed irregularities are extensively chronicled in Forge World's Imperial Armor Volume 9, The Badab War, Part 1, by Alan Bly, published in 2010. But, and this is the correction, those gene seed irregularities are M41. They are not M31. Luft Huron, pronounced Luft Huron,
was the chapter master who began withholding the astral claw's gene seed tithe to the Magos Inviglia in 748 M41, and conducted heretical rapid gene seed zygote cultivation experiments in the astral claw's apothecarian from the mid-700s M41 onward, swelling the chapter's numbers to roughly 3,500 battle brothers in clear violation of the Codex Astartes. That is, post-heresy chapter master corruption. That is not a Tyranis line stock anomaly. The astral claws are not, by any honest reading of the Badab war materials, derived from Thunder Warrior gene stock.
Their irregularities are 40,000 years downstream of the period this video is investigating. So the script removes the astral claws from the candidate list. They do not belong in this conversation. The audience discussion lane sometimes drags them in because Luft Huron is the most famous gene seed fraud figure in 40K canon, but the chronology is wrong. Moving on. Candidate 3, the Charnel Guard. Suspected third founding Blood Angel successor, fleet-based and reclusive, operating with an arsenal that includes at least 3 Fellblade super heavy tanks and a formidable fleet of Fire Raptor gunships, both of them weapon systems that are extremely unusual to find in a chapter founded in M33 or later. The Charnel Guard's founding records are partial. They are not formally acknowledged by the Blood Angels as a member of the Sanguinary Brotherhood. They maintain a deliberately occluded operational profile. Founded by Dominion Zephon, a notable Blood Angels warrior whose own chronological placement is contested. The audience discussion overlay reads the Charnel Guard as another candidate for the second tube. The reading is thinner than the Marauder's reading. The canonical Blood Angels lineage is harder to displace, and the chapter's anomalous arsenal profile is more naturally explained by third founding Blood Angel successor irregularity than by a Thunder Warrior gene stock graft. The script flags the Charnel Guard as a candidate the audience surfaces, but converges on the Marauders as the stronger candidate. Mention in passing the pre-Badab Carcharodons. The Carcharodons hold a separate mystery. The Tiberos as Warden, Korax as Secret Keeper, 2 lost Primarchs reading that an earlier video on this channel addressed in the Tiberos brief covers a different hidden cohort. The Carcharodons are not this video's lane. Move past them quickly. So, Marauders, most likely. With the caveat, explicit, on the record, named, that the canonical Marauders lineage is White Scar's second founding, and the Tyranis line gene stock graft is interpretive overlay surfaced by the audience discussion community. This is the strongest available reading. It is not the only available reading. It is the one this video commits to. 15 minutes. The splicing. Because the candidate chapter discussion only makes sense if you accept the audience commenter's second premise. And the second premise is harder than the first. The second premise is, Tyranis would have grafted a methodology, not just material. Tyranis would have transmitted to his successor, to Goda by canonical name, to Khar Vortek by this script's narrative handle, not just a sample of gene stock, but an entire approach to gene engineering. An approach that does not respect the standard Astartes purity protocols. An approach that splices. An approach that hybrids. The audience commenter put it directly. Tyranis would not have cared about the splicing taboos. The canonical evidence for this is thin, but it is non-zero. The Outcast Dead establishes Tyranis as a maintained laboratory operator. McNeil is explicit that the petitioner's city laboratory is functional, equipped, and staffed. The laboratory is not for show. The laboratory is producing work. The work is reverse engineering. The work is gene modification. The work is, by definition, outside Imperial regulation. Because if the Imperium knew the laboratory existed, the Imperium would burn it. Master of mankind,
Dembski-Bowden, 2017, broadens the frame. The novel documents the M30 ethics dispute inside the Emperor's inner circle, the calculus over how disposable the Thunder Warrior cohort was supposed to be, how necessary the gene purity protocols were going to be when the Astartes legions came online, how much room the Emperor was willing to give to experimental side channels.
The Sigillite faction held the line for gene purity. The Tyranis faction, and the reading here is interpretive, the novel does not draw the lines this sharply, held the line for operational survival of the existing cohort. Two factions, two ethics, one emperor, one decision. The decision went to Sigillite. The Tyranis faction lost. The Thunder Warriors were classified as transitional, replaced, and culled. But culled is not the same as erased. Goda survived. Goda walked out of the Temple of Woe with a methodology in his head and, by the audience reading, a tube on his back. And the chapter Goda seeded, if Goda seeded a chapter, would inherit not just a slice of Tyranis line gene stock, but the entire approach. Splicing tolerant, hybrid tolerant, operationally pragmatic about how an Astartes is built, which is, the audience discussion lane will tell you, exactly what the Marauders look like. You see, the master of mankind was not content with one kind of soldier. He never was. The Emperor built Thunder Warriors. He built Custodes. He built Astartes. He built Primarchs. 4 cohorts, 4 design briefs, 4 answers to the same operational problem. The Thunder Warriors were the cannon fodder layer. The audience commenter's second message put it exactly right. The Emperor had already made the perfect warriors. The Custodes were perfect before the Thunder Warriors even existed. What the Emperor needed in M30 was numbers. And numbers means disposable. And disposable means a cohort that the Emperor was always going to dispose of. But one of those disposable warriors, by canonical text, survived the disposal, Tyranis. And by canonical text, one of his lieutenants survived alongside him, Goda. And by the audience-surfaced reading, that lieutenant became something the Emperor's calculus never accounted for. A bridge, a graft, a continuation. 19 minutes. Why 2? Why hide both differently? This is where this video and the brief 05 companion video converge. Asterion Moloc, per the companion video, is hidden in plain sight. He is operating today in M41 as chapter master of the Minotaurs. His name is on Imperial Guard tactical reports. His face has been seen by other chapter masters. His existence is not classified. What is classified, what the audience discussion lane has spent decades trying to penetrate, is his actual identity. The Proteus Protocol reading argues he is a legacy identity passed across multiple successive chapter masters via engrammatic enforcement. The Captain Metallos Morax reading argues he is a Great Crusade Iron Warrior in exile. The companion video reading argues he is Ollanius Pius, perpetual. 3 theories, 1 man. The Imperium has no interest in resolving which, that is, concealment as perpetual identity. Hide the man, leave the gene line dead. Gota is the inverse. Hide the man, keep the gene line alive. Gota does not need to be seen ever again. Gota does not need to be photographed on the bridge of a battle barge, or named in a chapter right. Gota only needs to have spent enough time in M31 transferring viable Tyranis line gene stock to a Mechanicus-friendly successor, a chapter that was being raised anyway during the second founding chaos, a chapter whose founder needed source material and was not asking too many questions. A chapter that would absorb the graft and then close ranks and never speak of the donor. That is the Marauders on the audience reading. Founded officially in M31, the second founding, a Khan-descended successor, and quietly, in addition, seated by a Tyranis line sample carried out of the Temple of Woe. Two strategies, one for the man, one for the bloodline, both serving the same directive. Keep the Thunder Warrior generation operationally alive without acknowledging that the Thunder Warrior generation is still alive. The Emperor would not have authorized this.
The Emperor wanted his transitional cohort to disappear. The Sigillite, Marauder, is the figure who, on the audience reading, authorized it. Marauder is the figure who, on the audience reading, signed the Sigillite directive that kept the Inquisition from flagging the Tyranis line stock when it surfaced in M31 records. Marauder is the figure who, on the audience reading, looked at the Emperor's clean slate doctrine and quietly preserved a back door. Because the Sigillite knew, in M30, what the Emperor would not admit until much later, that the Imperium would need everything it could keep, that the call was wasteful, that a Tyranis line graft, properly hidden, was a hedge. 23 minutes. Why this matters. The Thunder Warrior generation was supposed to be a transitional cohort, brutal, short-lived, replaced by the Astartes legions when the Astartes legions came online. That is the official record.
That is the version every faceless 40K lore channel will give you when you ask about Thunder Warriors. Built, used, discarded. But the audience surface thesis here is that 2 members of that cohort survived in a form that mattered. Asterion Moloc, the man, is currently fielding a chapter master at the head of the Minotaurs in M41. Whoever Asterion Moloc actually is. And Goda's gene line, the bloodline, is, on the audience reading, currently fielding line Astartes in the Marauders chapter in M41, whoever those Astartes actually are. If that reading is right, then the Thunder Warrior generation did not end. It diversified. It split into 2 surviving paths, one preserving a man, one preserving a bloodline, and both paths are still operating in the Imperium today. This reframe matters because it changes what the Thunder Warrior cohort was for. If the Thunder Warriors ended in M30, they were a stopgap. If 2 of them survived to seed institutions that persist into M41, they were a wager. A wager that paid off in long-form ways the canon has never explicitly recognized, because the canon does not want to recognize them. Because if the canon recognized them, the official line, that the Astartes replaced the Thunder Warriors cleanly, would no longer hold, and the official line, 10,000 years downstream, is doing administrative work the Imperium would prefer not to compromise. The Thunder Warriors did not end, they were absorbed, and that is the difference the audience commenter was reaching for. 27 minutes. The Inquisition's silence. Slow down. This is the second slow beat. The post-heresy Inquisition has a standard protocol for unaccounted gene stock. The protocol is straightforward. Flag, investigate, pursue, recover, integrate or destroy. The Inquisition does this for every Astartes chapter, for every Mechanicus side channel, for every renegade legacy. The Inquisition has standing authority, granted by the High Lords, ratified across centuries, to pursue any unaccounted gene material to its source, and either bring it under Imperial control or end it. The Inquisition has never pursued the Tyranis line stock. This is the strongest piece of evidence the audience reading has. Because inquisitorial silence in 40K canon is not noise. Inquisitorial silence is signal. The Inquisition pursues gene stock fraud.
The Inquisition pursued loved Huron in M41 for far less than what the Tyranis line represents. The fact that no inquisitorial conclave, no Ordo Hereticus investigation, no Ordo Malleus precedent has ever opened a case file on Tyranis's gene stock is not because the Inquisition does not know about it. The Inquisition knows everything. The Inquisition's files are exhaustive. The Inquisition's silence is purchased. Chris Wright's 2017 novel Vaults of Terra, The Carrion Throne, dramatizes exactly this dynamic.
Inquisitor Erasmus Kroll, Ordo Hereticus, working in M41, repeatedly opens archive locks and finds them stamped with Malcador's seal. The seal is post-heresy, uncontestable. The seal is the Sigillite saying, "This stays buried." The seal is binding on the Inquisition 10,000 years after the Sigillite's death. The seal is the mechanism by which the Imperium quietly preserves things the Imperium cannot publicly acknowledge. The Tyranis line gene stock, if the audience reading is right, sits behind one of those seals. Not because it has been forgotten, not because the Inquisition is incompetent, because the Sigillite in M30 or M31 made the decision that the Imperium would need the Tyranis line more than it needed the Tyranis line eliminated, and signed an order that has bound the Inquisition ever since. This is the most interpretive beat in the script. The Vaults of Terra novel does not name the Tyranis stock specifically. The Sigillite directive infrastructure is canonical. The specific application is the audience-surfaced overlay. Honest framing matters. The script is committing to the reading. The script is not pretending the canonical text has done the committing for it. But the pattern fits. The Sigillite signed the kinds of orders that exactly match what the Tyranis line stock would have required. The Inquisition's behavior with respect to the Tyranis line stock, total silence, no flag, no pursuit, matches exactly what a Sigillite-directed legacy seal would produce. And the Marauders, whatever else they are, whatever else their canonical lineage says, operate the way a chapter operates when its donor record has been administratively closed. Isolationist, aloof, recruitment closed, gene audits internal, records protected. A chapter the Inquisition has agreed not to flag. 31 minutes. Closing capsule. Explicit. Did Tyranis's number 2 survive the Outcast dead operation? Yes, canonically. McNeil's text is explicit. Goda walked out of the Temple of Woe alongside Tyranis in M31, and the Black Library record has carried him as far as the page goes and then stopped. Did Goda seed a still extant Astartes chapter? Interpretively, yes. On the audience surfaced reading the comment thread on the proof video surfaced. Canonically, unconfirmed. The strongest candidate per this brief is the Marauders. The reading is interpretive. The flag stands. Did the Imperium agree not to pursue? Pattern, yes. The Sigillite directive infrastructure is canonical, and the Tyranis line stock fits exactly the profile of stock that would have been quietly sealed under that infrastructure. Specific application interpretive. The flag stands. The audience commenter, UHUOJ2ZISRC, May 2026, 7 likes on the originating comment and 2 more on the confirming extension, said, "That's 2 giant MFers that disappeared." The audience commenter was right. 2 giants disappeared.
Tyranis is the one the record names. Gota is the one the record carries to the edge of the page and then loses. And both of them, on the strongest available reading, are still operating in the Imperium today. One as a chapter master, one as a bloodline. Both quietly, both deliberately, both with the Sigillite seal sitting somewhere in an inquisitorial archive, holding the silence steady. There is a recruiting banner the Marauders unfurl at every chapter founding rite that has hung in their fortress monastery for 10,000 years. The banner shows two giants standing back to back. One faces a horizon line, the other faces a closed door. The chapter's official catechism says the giants represent the founder and his successor. The catechism does not name the founder. The catechism does not name the successor.
The chapter's records list the founding date as M32, which is a lie. The gene stock the chapter was raised from was sealed in M30, in a vault under the Himalazian Steppe, by a thunder warrior whose name was not Khar Vortek, but might as well have been. The banner has never been replaced. The door behind the second giant has never been depicted as open, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and in the grim silence of the Imperium's archives, there are only the doors the Sigillite closed.